Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting of the South Washington County Telecommunications Commission to order. As previously noticed, this meeting is being conducted by telephonic means pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. On August 18th, 2021, Mark Martinez, Executive Director, issued a written determination that the Commission's in-person meetings and meetings conducted under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.02 are not practical or prudent because of the ongoing COVID-19 health pandemic, particularly the Delta variant of the virus, and that it is not feasible to allow members of the public to attend the Commission's meetings at the Commission's regular meeting locations or to require the Commission's Chief Legal Counsel, the Commission's Chief Administrative Officer, or any Commission Director to be physically present at the Commission's regular meeting location. This meeting is being conducted entirely through telephonic means. All commissioners can hear one another and can hear all discussion and testimony, and all votes will be conducted by roll call. Members of the public were and are invited to participate with this meeting by calling in via the phone number listed on the website, which is 312-626-6799. Mr. Executive Director, do we have a quorum to conduct the meeting tonight?
We have a quorum.
All right, do you want to conduct the roll?
Sure. Chair James.
Here.
Vice Chair Bloom.
Here.
Treasurer Date.
Here.
Secretary Rom.
Here.
Councilmember Olson.
Here.
Councilmember Ingeman.
Here.
Commission Director Downs.
Here.
Those are all the voting members in attendance. We have alternate member Randy Olson.
Here.
Our attorney, Mike Bradley.
Here.
And myself, Executive Director Mark Martinez.
Very good.
All present.
Thank you. So all members of the commission have been given a packet with the agenda in it. So I'd be looking for a motion and a second to approve the agenda tonight, unless anyone has anything to pull from the agenda.
I'll remove the agenda.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Do you want to run the roll call, Mark?
Sure. James.
Aye.
Bloom.
Aye.
Date.
Aye.
Rom.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Ingeman.
Aye.
Downs.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Very good. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment. No one is attending virtually, I can tell, but anyone in council chambers there?
There is not.
Okay. All right, moving on. Then we got a couple of items that were on the consent agenda. Do I have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move consent.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Mark, you want to run the roll?
Sure. Commissioner James.
Aye.
Bloom.
Aye.
Date.
Aye.
Rom.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Ingeman.
Aye.
Downs.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Very good. Moving on to reports. Mr. Executive Director, it's time for your report.
Yes. Thank you. Chair James. Hopefully you can see this remotely.
Yes. Let me see it.
Recent capital projects that were completed were the EOC room, public safety at the city of Woodbury. And we're currently in progress at the Cottage Grove Central Fire Station. Is that currently in progress still?
I think he's finishing up quotes for it right now and scheduling.
Okay, finishing up quotes there. That was something that we had considered doing in 2022, but we're moving it up into 2021. We're still also working on a number of projects at the commission office that we had thought about doing this year. About this time last year when we were approving this year's budget, we were taking into consideration a number of things, whether we were going to stay in our current space. We ended up staying, and so now we're able to move forward on a few things. So we're receiving bids on upgrading our playback system primarily, doing some upgrades in our conference room and also pulling some network cable so we can update some of our IT infrastructure and firewall capabilities. I'll get more into that detail here in a moment. With the subcommittees, commission directors, I met today with the HR committee, and we talked through some things around compensation and filling the vacant position we have for the future. Some of that is tied into our strategic plan, and I'm also working to get the strategic planning committee together as well. I want to finalize that before we post any position. And we'll also go through some of the payroll and wages and benefits increases in the budget here in a moment as well. The technology committee is planning to meet tomorrow. And I will also, during the budget conversation, talk about a couple ideas with regards to education in the new budget. I've also included the MACTA e-brief that went out in August. That's in there for you to read. But I primarily wanted to talk with you today about what a cool thing yesterday. I was able to attend the Minnesota Rural Water Association conference last year and present our informational documentary, Water, the Oil of the Century. And it was really great opportunity. We had found out about this conference through the DNR and one of the individuals there that we interviewed for the documentary. She had told us about this conference and put us in contact with them. We sent them the film and they previewed it and they liked it a lot, so they put us into their agenda for the conference. It was originally going to be over the lunch hour on Tuesday, but when I talked with her, Lori Blair from the association, she asked if I would be interested in presenting it at the morning session, general session on Wednesday morning. And so I was there in St. Cloud and we screened the film. I gave a brief introduction of the film, let everyone know there what the commission, the work that we do, and kind of how the film came to be, which was originally started with the water ban that had occurred in Cottage Grove back in 2017, and then the previous 3M settlement in the following years, and let them know that we really wanted to, or I really thought that there was a story there, some more information, helpful information we could provide the residents of our area around water quality and how water gets to our households every day. And so after doing some research, I didn't really see a comprehensive video about that, specifically about our area. And so I thought there was an opportunity there. And so that's really kind of how it got started, with the thought being that we could show all the great work involved in how water gets from the source to your faucet. All the great work that's done at the municipal level and in collaboration with the state agencies. And we screened the film, and I got nice applause at the end and a couple follow-up questions. But what was really great was the keynote was right after the film, and the gentleman that was giving the keynote had flown in from Utah, and he was on their national board. And he got up there, and the first thing he did was just rave about the video and talk about how great it was to see a film about conservation and really a key point about educating the youth. And throughout his keynote, he referenced the film a couple times during his keynote. So it was really great. some of the organizers there turned to me and like gave me the thumbs up when their keynote was referencing it. So it was a really good time. It was really well received. And I wanted to thank the commission again for helping to make that possible, because it was really kind of a landmark project for us in so many different ways. We were able to expand our technology with it. It was the most collaborative project we'd ever worked on, and we learned a lot. So I think it's a great centerpiece going forward. With the work that we do, I think it was a catalyst for how we approach our work now going forward. So that was a lot of fun. And that will conclude my report. Happy to take any questions.
Hearing none, I think we can move on to the treasurer's report with the second quarter actuals.
Yep. Included in the packet is the second quarter actuals. We got the revenue component in a few weeks back. And so just kind of bottom lining the revenue component, you'll see that we're well above our projected revenue. A lot of that has to do with the fee audit settlement that we received at the beginning of the year. That really had taken place most of last year, but we received the funding or the audit fees early this year. But as we had talked about the last commission meeting, the last 3 quarters have increased a bit. And so that's kind of a phenomenon that we may be seeing people holding on to cable subscriptions or coming back to cable. I still need to track that quite for more time, but another thing that's always that has benefited us in the long run is the growth in the area, and our development out here is advantageous to growth for the commission. I'll skip down to, the last CenturyLink revenue we received was $8.19 there. Expenses running under budget with expenses. A couple things happening there. The capital projects that we have completed have been under budget, and again, the commission office hasn't moved forward with the projects that we had that we've been working on. I want to jump over now to a document that we talked about last year. I guess now's a good time. So since I'm giving the Q2 actuals, I want to share this document that was regarding this year's budget. This was a document that we had looked at last year, about this time last year. And this was as we were looking at the capital projects for 2021. And so the commission office, I was proposing $160,000 that would be spent over these technologies. It looks like we're going to prioritize for this year the channel servers and the closed captioning. We're going to hold off on the archiving and cloud-based editing until next year, because we still need to do a lot of research on that. As you can imagine, it's also a technology that's evolving, and as in closed captioning had been evolving a lot, and it still is too, but we feel like it's gotten to a place where it's more reliable with regards to live closed captioning and being ADA compliant. So we're going to be able to prioritize the city meetings with closed captioning. And it really dovetails into the channel servers as well. So the capital that's expected to be expended for this year, a lot of that still is with the commission office. And then Woodbury, we had, actually, let me jump down to Cottage Grove first. Cottage Grove, we moved River Oaks to 2020's budget. If you remember, we had a surplus at the end of 2020, about $200,000. And so we moved River Oaks up into 2020. And that ended up being actually about $100,000. And we also added a Hero Center project there at the end of last year, which was about $50,000. So we ended up spending about $150,000 of that $200,000 that was remaining at the end of last year. So that's one of the reasons why we're running under budget for this year. Going back to Woodbury, Eagle Valley ended up being less than half of that estimated amount, as well as public safety. We didn't have real bids at the time. You know, we put this document together. This was just earmarking the funds so we'd make sure we had the available funds based on previous projects. And so, looking at this summary, we had talked about $780,000 in capital for 2021. We spent the $150 of that, which brought that down to the $630 amount, and which is what is on our current budget. So that total amount, the $630 there, includes the the commission office projects, and then also includes Newport's new city hall construction, which at this time last year we were talking about the new construction being $150,000, and then at that time we were talking about a miscellaneous of $400,000.
40,000.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. 40,000. Yeah.
400 sounded good.
No.
So we have a little bit more information on that miscellaneous now that there is an ask from the city to inquire if the commission would support some additional AV in the new city hall. And so when we vote on the budget, which will be at our October meeting is when we'll vote, there will be that consideration to think through. So I'll go back to the actuals. I do anticipate a surplus. I don't know exactly what that is quite yet, but and a return to the cities at the end of the year as well. So any questions on the Q2 actuals?
You mentioned the $40,000 for the Newport ask. At some point, are we going to go through like what is that ask? I don't know if that's there. Are you saving that for the actual meeting that we're voting on the budget?
Yes, we're working to get actual numbers for the commission on what that cost is going to be. We don't have the exact figure yet.
And that, we're talking about that $40,000, that additional, not, the $150 is already locked, but we're going to get information on what the additional ask is, right?
Well, it was in this year's budget, and that has already been approved.
Okay.
I didn't have details of that miscellaneous, though, and so,
That's what we're going to get?
yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Yep.
Hearing no other questions, we can move on to our legal report, which I know Mr. Bradley is online here with us, and he's sent out a nice memo with several items to update. So, Mike, I don't know if there's anything you want to highlight in particular?
Well, good evening, Chair and members. Yeah, my report is in your packet. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. I gave a fairly in-depth report at the executive committee, but the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals case that you've been involved in has concluded. There's a decision now on whether or not to seek a petition for certiorari Supreme Court. The deadline for filing is November 1st, and that is a to be determined issue. You can see here on the slide that the report showed some information about our firm, some firm news in there. The exciting news for me is that we have a new attorney joining our firm. His name is Tu Zhang, and he started work here August 2nd, and is doing a fantastic job for us. So
When will we get to meet
introducing
Mr.
him to
Zhang?
you all sometime at a future meeting.
Okay.
There was also a really good decision out of the First Circuit that supported a Maine state law relating to city build-out requirement, statewide density build-out requirement, and also specific provisions related to PEG. So it upheld a state law requiring the PEG channels being on the basic service tier near broadcast channels, that the PEG channels be carried in HD, and that the information for the electronic programming guide be provided for the PEG channels as well. So it was a really, important decision in the cable franchising context. Both the Sixth Circuit and First Circuit decisions are. I'll be talking about both of those decisions at the upcoming NATOA conference in September. I'll also be speaking at the Wisconsin Community Media annual conference in October. Probably be speaking at the MACTA conference also in October, and I'll probably be touching on all of those different things at all those conferences. But other than that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We're excited to hear you got a replacement for Vance, and we expect we'll get a chance to meet him. Either are you going to bring him to the next workshop, or it'd probably be easier at a workshop to be able to meet him in person. Would that be available?
Yeah, that would be great. It'll be sometime soon for sure.
Okay, all right.
You'll get exposed to him sometime soon.
Well, tell him, and there'll be pizza there, so that would hopefully be something. Any other questions?
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, any other questions for Mr. Bradley? All right. Moving on, unfinished business. The thing we have to report out, we completed Executive Director Mark Martinez's performance evaluation or annual review. That was done. It was held Thursday, July 29th. So Vice Chair Bloom and I completed Mark's annual review. We had to acknowledge that Mark had not received a review in 2020 due to COVID and changes of things. So this was kind of a makeup annual review. All of you were invited to provide input into his evaluation, and I did get plenty of good input from both staff and commissioners. So I appreciate everyone that did submit their input, and that was all taken into account, and had a good discussion with Mark. We're very pleased with Mark's performance. Have identified some areas of improvement, and the biggest one that we kind of highlighted really for Mark as well as for us as commissioners is performance evaluations, that we need to get on on a regular routine with this at the end of the year and make sure that these are all completed. So what we came away with the recommendation, and we need formal approval from all of you, is that we are recommending a 6% salary increase for Mark, which totals $5,410. And that would be retroactive to January 1 of this year. And so with the agreement that we would get back on track, and Mark would be doing the same thing with his staff of making sure evaluations, annual reviews are done at the end of this year for 2021. So if any of you have any questions, some of you were at the workshop, so we did talk about this in more in depth as commissioners at the workshop. So I don't know if any of you that were there or that weren't there have any questions that we can answer about that review. We can answer those. Otherwise, I'd be looking for a motion and a second for what we're recommending here.
I'll move to recommend.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Mark, do you want to go ahead and do the roll call on this?
Yes. James.
Aye.
Bloom.
Aye.
Date.
Aye.
Rom.
Aye.
Olson.
Aye.
Engman.
Aye.
Downs.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. All
Thank
right,
you.
that was our, thank you, everyone. Then new business, looking ahead to 2022. Mark, we've got a
Yep.
budget draft that you'd like to discuss.
Yes. Included in the packet is the budget draft, and the memo lists out capital projects proposed for 2022. Again, the fire station at Cottage Grove, we have moved up to this year, so that will be completed. And you know, at the time we were talking this time last year about this year's budget, we thought the Newport, we had thought the Newport new construction might occur this year, 2021. Looks like it's going to be next year, so it's going to roll over into next year. That might not be a really good term to use, rollover, but the expenditure will hit the books in 2022. I can work with the vendor once we award the contract to them. There might be some flexibility if it's close to January 1st, where we could pay for the equipment, because there's usually a 6 to 8 week lead time in getting the equipment. And so it could be right at the end of the year. We'll have to wait and see based on when we have availability for the install and when the vendor can get the equipment and all that. But I just want to let you know that it's in both budget lines for this year and next year.
If I could make a recommendation, as soon as you get the design built out where you know what you want to purchase, I would go and purchase it as soon as possible, because supply chains globally are tightening, component shortages are happening all over the place. And again, I don't know if it would affect any of this equipment, I really don't know, but I would just say it'd be prudent, I think, to get, once you know you're going to get something, to get it in as soon as possible. That's just my opinion.
Appreciate that. Thank you. The commission office would include the archiving system potentially once we've concluded our research on that. It would also include potentially expanding closed captioning to other channels if we feel we're successful with the government meetings first. And the total capital ask for next year's at $500,000, which is historically been our average over the years. In payroll expenses, there's a 2.98 COLA increase and really a benefits increase of almost 2.5%. Anything else in the budget? Let me just jump down here. Oh, revenue, income. 2 years ago, we had cut the revenue back by 10% in anticipation of the 621 order. What we saw was that last year's revenues were about 5% above where we had anticipated. And so what I've done here with this year's budget is increased it back to the an additional 5% to get us back to the 10%, to get back the 10% that we had cut 2 years ago. Increased it by 5 last year and increasing it again by 5 for next year. As I mentioned, revenues seem to be ticking up. And we also have the new franchise renewal in progress that's going well. We're hoping that that's works for both entities and in a positive way for another 10 years. And there's some good things happening. So I think the revenue, we could always adjust it, at the middle of the year too, if we feel it's changing. But I feel confident that things are going well to add this extra income. Here. There's some, as part of our strategic plan, as we look to finish that up, a big part of our community engagement kind of pillar to that is recognizing that we could do so much in the community, being a partner in our communities. And we've been doing that periodically over the last year. We've done things like we've simulcast fundraisers for various nonprofits. We're looking to put together a panel discussion on autism awareness. And these kinds of things where we're looking at projects that add real value to the communities, it's another return of value for our member cities in a way that's indirect, but really kind of shining a light on some of the local businesses, the economic development, the nonprofits, the social work, the people that make up these great communities. And so part of that is also an educational piece too. You may have read recently that TPT, the local PBS affiliate, received a $9 million donation gift from a previous retired professor from the U of M. And that was specifically geared towards STEM programming. And that was really fascinating to me that they got that gift of $9 million to produce educational content, programming content. And it really got me thinking that we could potentially partner with the school districts to do something similar where we kind of focus on some educational component. For example, other commissions in the metro, other community media organizations throughout the country really focus on everything from youth services, training, to student programs, to covering high school sports, covering graduations, covering high school events like the local band, high school band performances, lots of educational programming. And that's really, where PEG comes from, public educational and government access. We eliminated our public access a number of years ago. And I think now more than ever, we need, and part of our strategic plan is to really bring back some of those components of public engagement, educational value into our channels and what we do. And so some of the terminology might sound like old school kind of public access, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a new approach, and being a real partner in the community with our other organizations and shining a light on the value of our member cities. So I'm working on putting some more details around some educational opportunities in the budget that I don't have ready for you tonight, but I will have that at the executive committee meeting next month. Staff is really excited about doing things like maybe a summer program for a week-long summer program for students around video training, production. We want to connect with the schools to see what they're doing, so we're not kind of trying to reinvent the wheel, but adding additional value to what they're doing. And so that we have it's a robust conversation about working with the schools in this kind of new way. Maybe we could do some STEM programming on our channels, you know? How cool would that be? You know, that's not something that you typically come across when you're watching television. Also kind of utilizing what's going on with social media and how people are really developing their own brand on social media. Now, I'm sure there's a number of teachers that are out there creating content, and I think we could find some of those people and bring some of their content that they're creating into our channels that adds value back to our communities. So I'll have more information about that next month, but I just wanted to let you know that there will be a budget ask for that. And so looking at the review and voting timeline, I'll have a final budget for the September executive meeting on the 23rd, and then give everyone a chance to review and comment so that we're prepared to vote on the October 28th regular meeting. And that's all I have. Any questions?
All right, hearing none. We can move on to just general commission comments and requests. Does anyone have any comment or request they'd like to make of Mark or to say to the rest of us?
Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of comments.
Go for it.
First, Mark, I wanted to compliment the production team for the wonderful video that they did recently for Gary Orloff here in our city of Cottage Grove. Very well done, and he's definitely deserving of some recognition, so thank you for that. I also wanted to compliment the production team on the video of my friend Steve Morris in Woodbury, kind of featuring some more in-depth information about who he is and why he serves, et cetera. I thought that was very well done and very compelling. Steve likes the camera and the camera likes him, but it was still really well done, so thank you for that. I also wanted to inform the commission, if you weren't already aware, that the City of Cottage Grove's communications manager, Scott Soroka, recently left the city. He took a position in the private sector, and we're very sad to see Scott go. Wonderful guy, and I know he did a lot of work with our friends at SWCTC on different things, mayor's moments, council updates, et cetera. But we are actively recruiting for a replacement, and we're reevaluating the position description to make sure that it truly is in sync with what it is that we're looking to do. And as you talked, Mark, about some of the things that you have as a vision moving forward with respect to educational programming, et cetera. I think that's something that, at least from the city of Cottage Grove's point of view, would be really exciting to get involved with. And that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. How do we help educate residents? How do we help educate young people? How do we get people engaged on different things? People don't read the newspaper anymore. I mean, not many anyway. And they get a lot of their content through social media, through the internet, through YouTube, et cetera. And that's how they learn. So, I look forward to that conversation because I think there's a lot of room for that sort of programming, and I think it would be very well received. So as we transition, forward with a new communications manager at some point, that's one of the things that we're going to be focused on is, does this person have that sort of skill set with regard to working on those kinds of projects, et cetera. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson.
Thank you.
My communications group had heard that Scott was leaving, and they really enjoyed working with Scott as well. And so they were sad to hear that he was leaving and going to the private sector. So we wish you luck in finding someone as good as for his replacement. So good luck.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? The one comment I would just like to make quickly related to that I heard at the last workshop that our attorney brought up and that Mark kind of touched on just briefly in the budget was closed captioning. As a group, we've talked about in previous years, closed captioning being like a goal that we'd like to be able to do, but previously it just seemed like it was way too expensive and out of reach. What Mr. Bradley highlighted for us is that really it's much more important that we get on doing this because of ADA compliance. So it's making it lit the fire for me a little bit, at least so understanding that we need to get on getting a closed captioning solution in place. So Mark mentioned that there's $50,000 that's been earmarked for that. And so I'll like to make sure Brian and I are meeting with Lonnie as part of the technology subgroup. And so it's one of the things I'm going to want to make sure we're talking about. I don't know if Lonnie's identified, Mark, already a closed captioning solution that he's ready to move ahead with, or if we're still doing some investigation on that or whatnot. But I just want to make sure that the rest of the commissioners were aware that that's kind of become a higher priority than what we had previously set. And that I will be working with Brian and Lonnie and whoever, I guess, to make sure that we're driving ahead with that.
I can add, Chair, to that. Lonnie and I are scheduled to tour the city of Bloomington's newly installed channel delivery system there. That includes closed captioning and a product that we're considering for our organization. So we'll have a firsthand look at that next Thursday.
That triggered. Is it a one-time purchase, or is it really more of a subscription type of thing that we'd be needing to be paying like a service ongoing? And if so, is it in the budget to include that service?
Right. Bloomington's solution is a one-time cost, but there are other services that are subscription-based out there.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. Very good. Thank you. Any other comments from anyone online or in person there? If not, I would be looking for a motion and a second to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Mr. Executive Director, do a roll call.
Chair James,
Aye.
Commissioner Bloom,
Aye.
Councilmember Date,
Aye.
Commissioner Rom,
Aye.
Councilmember Olson,
Aye.
Councilmember Ingeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Downs.
Aye.
Motion is approved. We are adjourned.
We are adjourned. Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.